What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be checking out how the Netherlands built its biking Utopia. So, how did they manage all that? Let's get into it. Excuse me, I'm getting a cough for some reason. So yeah, let's see what we got here today, guys. If you're new to the channel, here we do videos around Netherlands. So if you're into that, guys, go smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's get on with the video.
The Netherlands is known for having some of the best bike infrastructure in the world, but this small European country wasn't always a utopia for cyclists. Take a look at this picture of what Amsterdam looked like in the 1970s. Wow. Or this one right here.
Wow, literally so much traffic, bro.
At first, when I saw these images, I thought that they were a fluke, just the rare photo of a traffic-clogged city, but I soon learned that Dutch cities like Amsterdam used to have just as much traffic and air pollution as US cities do today. And after learning this, I became obsessed with this question. How did Dutch cities go from looking like this to this? Wow. In this video, I want to share what I learned with you and tell you why I think there might just be hope for my car-obsessed society here in America.
How the Netherlands built a biking utopia.
In order to understand how the Dutch built a biking utopia, we have to go back in time a little bit.
We have to go back maybe to the 1930s, 1920s, 1930s, when we got more and more cycles.
That's Marjolein, who co-authored a book on the history of cycling in the Netherlands. She told me that the 1920s and 30s were the first golden age of Dutch biking.
The bicycle was very practical, it was affordable for many people, the distances were not so large, and it was faster than going by foot.
But World War II changed everything for cycling in the Netherlands. In 1940, Nazi Germany invaded and began a 5-year-long occupation of the country. During the occupation, the Germans did two things. They imposed tire rations, which made it difficult to buy a new bike and repair an existing one. And then they also stole bikes, the exact number of which is sort of unknown and one of these historical mysteries, but some estimates put it at as high as 50% of all bikes in the Netherlands. Because of all this, cycling traffic fell by 50% during and after the war. But the war had one other major influence on cycling. According to one estimate, 60% of all transportation infrastructure in the Netherlands was destroyed during World War II.
Wow.
Roads, bridges, and tunnels were all bombed during the war. In fact, some cities like Rotterdam were completely flattened. And all this destruction forced the Netherlands to basically rebuild their entire country from scratch. With this blank canvas, the Netherlands didn't immediately set out to build a biking utopia. Instead, the opposite happened. Like so many countries around the world, the post-war era was a golden age for the personal automobile. In 1950, there were 139,000 cars in the Netherlands. 20 years later, there were 3.4 million.
Just imagine, bro.
There were a few reasons for this dramatic growth. First, cars got really cheap, making them affordable to middle-class Dutch families. Second, the Dutch got really wealthy in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. Between 1945 and 1970, per capita income went up by 5x. But another major reason for this growth was the fact that the Dutch government built infrastructure for cars. And in doing this, they took a lot of inspiration from the United States.
Okay.
In the 1960s, the Dutch government hired an American planner named David Jokinen to help modernize the city of Amsterdam. As the number of cars grew, roads in the city had become congested, and Jokinen had a plan to fix this problem. So what was his plan? Basically, he wanted to demolish a bunch of working class neighborhoods, build ring roads all around the city, and even fill in some of the beautiful canals with concrete to make roads. Now, it's worth noting that the Dutch were far from alone in their grand modernist aspirations. All around the world, city planners were coming up with ways to demolish old urban neighborhoods and replace them with highways and roads. But as the number of cars grew in the Netherlands, so did the number of people killed by cars each year.
That is true. A lot of accidents happen by car, bro. Like, honestly, the safer way, bicycles, you know, if you don't need to use your car, you know, just go around the corner or something, you can always use a bicycle, or even your legs, you know, you can just walk, you know.
By the 1970s, 3,000 people were being killed by cars each year.
And that was really cause for
That's crazy.
Outrage all over the Netherlands. And especially the outrage was focused on children being killed in traffic.
In 1971, 500 children were killed by cars. One of those children was Simone Langenhoff, who was struck and killed by a car on her way to school. In response to this tragedy, her father, a journalist, wrote a newspaper article with the title, "Stop de Kindermoord," or "Stop Murdering the Children." The article inspired protests and eventually an entire movement.
So there were large demonstrations, 1,000 people on a bicycle, 4,000 people on a bicycle, 10,000 people on a bicycle, several demonstrations.
The next year, something else important happened. In 1972, the Dutch government released a report that found that in order to keep on building highways and roads, it would cost the government billions of dollars. Nearly every politician at the time agreed that that just wasn't feasible. It was just too much money. They all agreed that the country would have to look to an alternative to cars. And if that wasn't enough, another year later, the price of gas skyrocketed during the first oil crisis. Almost overnight, the price of oil went up by over 300%. In a nationally televised speech, the Prime Minister went on air and urged people to change their lifestyle and reduce the amount of energy that they used. He also announced a series of car-free Sundays, which gave people a glimpse of what cities might look like with fewer cars. As a journalist at The Guardian put it, people were suddenly reminded of what life was like before the hegemony of the car. But it was a long road from here to biking utopia. Or should I say, it was a long, protected bike lane. Huh? Anybody?
All right.
No? Okay. Everyone I interviewed for this story agreed on one thing. There wasn't one single event or decision that really changed everything in the Netherlands. No, the change was much more gradual, and it was a result of a lot of consistent advocacy and small decisions that all added up to the transformation that would take place over the next few decades. So let's go through some of the highlights.
Let's check it out. The highlights.
In the 1980s, a few
More
Dutch
bicycles.
cities began to experiment with ways to get people out of cars and onto bikes. For example, the cities of The Hague and Tilburg built bike lanes and painted them bright red. But biking rates didn't go up after they built these bike lanes. City planners learned that it wasn't enough to just build a few bike lanes throughout the city. No, you had to build an entire network of bike lanes throughout a city. Around the same time, Delft began running their own experiments. And rather than build a few bike lanes throughout the city, they decided to build a citywide network of bike lanes.
Wow.
And as a result, bicycle use went up by 6% and driving went down by 3%. It was considered an early success. In the 1980s, the Dutch government went on a bike lane building spree. Over 10 years, they built about 7,000 kilometers of bike lanes, increasing the total number of bike lanes in the country by 70%. But despite the growth of the network, people weren't really biking that much more. In 1990, Dutch people biked 12.8 billion kilometers. 4 years later, in 1994, they biked 12.9 billion kilometers. Now, I'm not that great at math, but I know enough to know that that's not that big of a difference. As one expert wrote, the construction of a network of bicycle routes is insufficient in itself for bringing about a sustainable increase in bicycle use. Simultaneous execution of a policy discouraging car use is deemed necessary. In other words, if you want people to bike, you can't just make it pleasant to bike, you have to make it a pain to drive.
Wow, that is the tightest parking spot I've ever seen, bro. Honestly, how is he gonna get out of that? Please explain. How is he gonna get out, bro? Wow.
Over the last 20 years, Dutch cities like Amsterdam and The Hague have done just that. One way they've done this is by making parking in cities expensive.
In the city center, I think you pay €7.50 per hour.
What?
That's
crazy,
quite
bro.
expensive. And that means if it's expensive, people will think about
I'm not
going
doing
by
that,
car
yeah.
twice.
But policies like this don't just discourage people from driving. They also provide income for the government. And many Dutch cities like Amsterdam use this money to build more bike and pedestrian infrastructure, in addition to charging an arm and a leg for parking.
I mean, bro, it's like a whole business sort of thing, you know, like a business model, building like a whole difference in the country. It's not that simple. Like, imagine it took them years and years to get people from cars onto bikes. So, I mean, they managed to do it. So congratulations to them.
Dutch cities also use a city planning strategy called traffic calming. The basic idea of this is to narrow roads, reduce speed limits, add speed bumps, and in general, just make it difficult to drive quickly through a neighborhood. This makes driving less desirable, but it also makes it safer for bikes and pedestrians. Overall result is less driving and more cycling and walking. Many Dutch cities have also been replacing some roads with car-free zones. As the name implies, these are basically areas of the city where cars can't go, with the exception of delivery trucks and emergency vehicles. And all of these changes have had an incredible effect in the Netherlands. Remember how earlier I mentioned that in the 1970s, about 500 children were dying from car fatalities every year? Well, 4 decades later, in 2010, 14 children died from car fatalities, a decrease of 97%.
That is just
Compared to the United
crazy.
States, the Netherlands has 3 times less car fatalities per capita. If the US could replicate this, we would save over 20,000 lives per year. And all of this biking is improving people's health. Everywhere in Europe, obesity rates are growing, with one exception, the Netherlands.
Like, bro, honestly, I really don't see the negative side about this. Like, bro, you're getting like people healthy, you know, from riding the bike, and it's like exercising. So it's good circulation of the blood and all that, keeping fit. Then less cars on roads, less deaths, less like accidents. It's a big deal, bro. I mean, honestly, that is just amazing.
As Melissa and Chris Brunlet point out in their book on this topic, similar biking rates in the United States would save a staggering 125,000 lives each year.
That's
and
a
of
big
course, all of
difference.
this is great for the planet too. In the United States, the average person emits 5.4 tons of CO2 per year driving. Dutch people, on the other hand, drive much less, and as a result, they emit 3 times less CO2 per year from their cars. For me, I think there's one big takeaway in this story, and I think it's this. We tend to look at our societies as fixed and basically stuck the way that they are. We think America is always going to be a land of strip malls and highways, or we think that the world's always going to burn fossil fuels and keep polluting our air. But the reality is that none of these things have to be true. The story of the Netherlands is proof that societies can and do change. And sometimes that change happens really quickly.
Wow, bro.
But as we saw, these
I'm literally
transformations
surprised by this video. Like, the Netherlands really do care about the world, in other words.
don't
bro.
happen on their own. They happen because of people like the activists that started the Stop the Kingdom War movement. They happen because of government employees that probably don't really get the credit that they deserve. And they happen because people like me and you show up to town meetings and ask for this stuff. But the first step in making these changes and building better cities is believing that we can do it in the first place.
Yeah. Wow, it's like, bro, the Dutch actually really do care about the people and everything in general. It's just, I don't know, I'm amazed by this video. Let me know, guys, your thoughts on this in the comments below. If you've got any other video recommendations, do join our Discord community. I do have a link in the description below, so go check that out as well. And yeah, guys, I hope you did enjoy. If you did, go smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn the bell notifications on so you get notified whenever I upload next. And yeah, I think that's about it for today's video. So thanks for watching and see you on the next one. Peace out.